ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Bob. I'd like to call the special call meeting, City Council, City of Homestead agenda to order. It's Monday, October 29th, 2012, at 5:10 in the evening. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick.
Here.
Councilman Maldonado.
Here.
Councilman Shelley.
Here.
Councilwoman Woolman.
Here.
Councilman Williams absent. Vice Mayor Burgess.
Here.
Mayor Bateman.
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Order of business, City Attorney.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Homestead, Florida, approving the lease agreement for City Hall office facilities between the City of Homestead, Florida as tenant and Prime Homes at Portofino Plaza, LLC as landlord for the temporary lease of City Hall facilities, authorizing the city manager to execute the lease agreement and any amendments or further documentation required therein, waiving competitive bidding for the build-out of the tenant improvements, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. So I move it? Move it. Thank you. Second? Thank you. Staff?
Lillian will go through the terms of the lease, just a synopsis.
In your council agenda package, there is a summary of the lease terms, starting with the landlord entity. There are actually two landlords on this lease. The first one is Prime Homes at Portofino Plaza Retail, LLC. That is the owner of the units on the first floor of the building. And the second landlord is Prime Homes at Portofino Plaza, LLC. That's the units on the second floor. The Plaza Retail, LLC has appointed the Plaza LLC as the attorney-in-fact and authorized agent to act on behalf of both parties. So in essence, the city will only be dealing with the Plaza Retail LLC entity. The premises consist of the units on the first floor that are listed therein and the second floor within the Portofino Plaza North Building. The general description and outline of the premises is on the floor plan attached as Exhibit B to the lease. The total square footage between the first and second floor is 14,693 square feet of net rentable area, inclusive of a common area factor of 16.06%. The premises are within the Portofino Plaza commercial condominium, and the total net rentable area in the building is 88,194. The term of the lease is a 5-year or 16-month term. The actual commencement date of the lease will begin when the landlord substantially completes the tenant improvements. And substantial completion is temporary CO and final approval of permits on all improvements and facilities. City also has the right and the option to renew the lease for 2 additional 5-year terms upon the same terms and conditions except for the rent. If the city elects to renew, the rent will be based on the market rate at that time as set forth in the lease, and that would be the prevailing market rate for similar commercial space in the City of Homestead. The city also has the flexibility and the right to take additional space, first refusal right on any space immediately adjacent or horizontally contiguous to the premises, and that right of first refusal would be exercised within 30 days. The same terms of the lease would apply. The city has the right to terminate early, even though this is a 5-year lease. At any time after 2 years, the city can terminate by providing the landlord with 90 days written notice. If the city were so elect to terminate, it must repay the landlord the unamortized cost of the tenant improvements according to the schedule you have attached to the lease as Exhibit F. That's the repayment schedule. The uses permitted on the lease are general governmental office use and municipal services. Section 5, your rent and additional rent. The initial payment and security deposit due upon execution of the lease. The initial payment is $44,242.64. That represents your first month base rent and your last month rent. And the city would also pay a security deposit in the amount of $20,815. That's the equivalent of 1 month's rent. Base rent during the term for the 60 months is set forth in the schedule that's attached as Exhibit C to the lease. Base rent starts on the commencement date, but it basically means that the first year of the lease term, the city pays no rent for months 1 through 5. Thereafter, for the second year of the lease, should you continue all the way through year 5, there will be annual increases of 3% on the base rent, and it's set forth in the schedule as well. If the city elects to renew for an additional 5 or 10 years, again, the rent would be based on the market rate as established in the lease. In addition to the base rent, the city would also pay upon commencement additional rent. And additional rent is based on the city's proportionate share of operating expenses for the entire building, based on its percentage interest of 16%. And the city would also pay its proportionate share of the taxes on those units. The specific units that are being leased all have their own folio numbers and are separately assessed by the county appraiser. For the first 12-month period of the lease, the operating expenses are established in Exhibit D, and that is another $404 per square foot, and that comes to a monthly amount of $4,946.64 monthly.
Could you repeat what that's for one more time, please?
Sure. That is the city's proportionate share of operating expenses for the building, and it's based on that 16%. And that's estimated at $4.04 a square foot, and that comes to monthly $4,946.64.
Is that considered like a CAM?
Yes, it's
Is
a
that what that
pass-through
is,
of
a
operating.
CAM?
Correct. That CAM on operating expenses is subject to a cap, an annual increase of 3%, so it'll never go up more than 3%. Except for uncontrollable expenses, which the landlord has no control over, and those are insurance and utility expenses. In addition to the CAM or the operating expense share, the city will pay the real estate taxes on those units. For the first 12-month period of the term, it's estimated that those taxes are $5,284.49 for real estate taxes.
Ms. Arango?
Yes.
Stop you there. Can you just provide a bit of clarity as far as the proportionate share of real estate taxes? Because for the average citizen, you think if you're renting, why are you paying taxes? So can you explain for our residents why this cost is associated with this facility?
Sure. Are you referring to the operating expenses and the taxes?
Well, not necessarily the operating expenses, because I'm sure they may understand that, but the real estate tax.
Okay.
When you're a renter, you generally don't pay taxes on a property.
Well, it's a pass-through. The entire building is about 88,000 square feet. The city square footage is about 14,693, and the city would be paying the taxes only on the premises that it's leasing. And these specific units have their own folio numbers and tax bills. So it's a straight pass-through of the taxes to the city of Homestead.
I understand that, but is that customary for commercial buildings for renters to pay the real estate tax?
No way.
This is a triple net lease, which means that the tenant is passed through operating expenses, taxes, and insurance. My understanding, and I'm not a leasing agent, that this is fairly typical in this market, in this rental market. But I would let the leasing agent and maybe Dennis chime in on that.
Councilwoman, what we did also is, because we had two basic challenges with this project. One was act quickly, as you all know, it was our charge. But secondly is don't overpay. And so we looked at numerous sites to make sure that we looked at everything that was potentially viable for us, and we make sure whoever we end up negotiating with, we don't overpay. Part of the issue for us was we don't necessarily have the expertise on commercial or real estate, so we hired an expert to assist us with the negotiations. He's here now representing the firm and can answer all your questions about comparables and why we think this is a good deal.
Hello. Hi, I'm Joe Abood. I'm with Colliers International. We're commercial real estate specialists. I myself and my team specialize specifically on office leasing. And we're also general contractors. I was a general contractor in Dade County and Monroe County, specializing in interior construction of office space. Probably about 3 million square feet of office space build out. And then on the leasing component side, many millions of square feet of leases that we've done, representing national and global tenants, as well as small mom and pop 1,200 square foot accounting firms. To get to your question, a very good question, there's basically two types of leases, a full service lease or a triple net lease. There's other types, but those are the predominant leases. In this particular market, triple net leases dominate, particularly at some of these centers that have a retail component. A full service lease will include the property tax in it, but the rate will be higher. On a triple net lease, the base rate is lower and the property tax component is pulled out and charged separately. At the end of the day, the numbers are all very similar. It's just a different way of managing your building. A particular owner might want to manage his building that way and collect his rents that way. So I would say that the property tax component is in all leases. It's very standard for the tenant to pay them. It's just, do they pay them all in one payment, or do they pay them separately? In this particular case, and in 90% of the cases in Homestead, it's not really dense. Homestead is not really a dense city as far as office components go. A lot of them will be mixed in with retail. You're going to find a triple net basis where it'll be separate.
Probably the only good thing about the taxes is paying the taxes. We get a portion of that back, so that'd be the only thing.
And I will say that's a component of the operating expenses, and as Lily had just mentioned, City of Homestead did negotiate a cap on controllable expenses. That will increase. I think it was a 3% cap, whether it's security guards, landscaping, anything to do with the building, just the uncontrollable one. The cap doesn't apply because the landlord really can't control that, and that would be property tax and property insurance.
Get your answer.
Did you want to?
So basically, it's yes, that it's customary.
It's very customary. It's just done two different ways. Sometimes you see it up front, like you are in this case, and other times you don't see it. It's blended into the rate, but the rate will be higher to adjust for it.
$17 a square foot is top of the market right now in Homestead, Florida.
For office component?
Yes.
I think, though, if he's here, he's prepared to do an analysis of what we looked at, and we were planning to do that after Lillian went through her terms, but if you'd like to do that now, we can do that, whatever your preference.
What? Are you finished?
Yes, I was finished.
I think so you don't have to backtrack. As you went through this, the financial scenario, I don't think you intentionally skipped around it, but I'd really like to see, for the public, monthly, what we're paying monthly, how it nets out at the end of the year. The first year, what we're paying in total lump sum. The second year, what we're paying in total lump sum. Because you kind of skirted around that, and I don't want you to have to go back at the end. So if you were going to come up with that, go ahead with your original. But I'd like to have it all line by line. Transparency.
Yes, Mayor, I'll go back to that. And going back to the base rent, there's a chart in the council memo, and this is Exhibit C to the lease as well, which itemizes the rent. So the first year of the lease term, months 1 through 5, base rent is abated, so there's no payment due. Months 6 through 12 of the first lease year, which is a 7-month period, the rent is at $17 a square foot. And that is a total amount for the 7 months of $145,705.50.
$145,000.
705.50.
43 cents.
Monthly, that is $20,815.08.
Because the public doesn't have the same sheets we have. Okay, second year?
Second year, months 13 through 24 of the lease term, the rent is increased by 3%. It's at $17.51 a square foot. That comes to an annual amount of $257,274.43. And that translates to a monthly amount of $21,439.54. Third year of the lease term, months 25 through 36. Again, another 3% increase.
$500 million, that's it.
Base rent is at $18.04. Total yearly base rent amount is $264,992.66, and monthly that is $22,082.72.
I'm sorry, the total for the third year?
Total for the third year is $264,992.66.
Yeah, I know, I want the public to hear it. Because you're talking well over $500,000, $600,000-$700,000 we're going to spend in renting if we're there 3 years. And the projection of the new city hall is 18 months to 20 months. And for God's sakes, for $500,000, you could buy a new building. So I have a problem with it. That's why I wanted it publicly put out. I think the public's going to have a real problem with it. Unless you can show me an insurance policy that we have here that's taking care of some type of catastrophic mold and radon and whatever, we got problems. Because you're going to spend $500,000 of the taxpayers' money to rent a building. And I got a problem with that. And it doesn't matter. I'm not here to beat anybody up. I'm here to put my opinion on the record. Because I've heard it all. I've heard it for a week, and I don't think the public realizes what we're about to do. I don't think they realize it, especially with special call meetings and not really discussed at regular meetings or regular council meetings or CAL meetings. And I got a problem with it. That's a lot of money. If we stay, which every government job seems to have overruns time-wise, financially. So we're lucky if we get in 24 months in that new building. That's if we start tomorrow. So in 24 months, we're going to spend $400,000+, not counting the $5,200, not counting the taxes. So we're going to spend $500,000 in 2 years to rent a building. I have a problem with that. It's my opinion.
Can I have one, please?
Sure.
$500,000 will be a drop in the bucket compared to what one person walking through that door with an attorney will mean to this city if somebody shows up with any health concerns.
Well, we've had this building. I've been here since 1995 in this building, and I've yet to see the document. I asked you, Mr. Manager, nicely at the last meeting to provide me with the document that the company who did the research on this building signed off letter saying, we believe that this building is XYZ. No one to date. And if you do have it, you never supplied me with it. The very next day, I didn't get anything. The following day, I get a memo, you're gone for a week. I haven't heard
I was
anything.
told that every member of this council was provided with the document.
No, I read the documents. That you said you had a specific letter. You and Julio both talked at last meeting. You had a specific letter from the company. That specific letter is not in my packet.
The issue that you raised at the last meeting was that the documentation that we submitted to you was not signed, and the documentation that we provided to you, every document is signed. So I don't know what more I can provide.
Well, you're saying it's signed based on the calibration of whether it's so many picos for this or so much for this. I want to see where they say that the health problem is at the level that I'm hearing from you that it's at. You're a manager. I'm a builder. I'm not a specialist in mold or, first it was radon and there was no discussion of mold. Then it was radon and mold. And then it was radon, mold, and asbestos.
All that is in the document.
Yeah, I saw that.
One of those test results are signed. There must be 100 signatures in there. Every radon test is signed. Every report is signed. Everything that's in, all the documents that were provided to you are all signed. Every single one of them.
There's no document signed saying that it's at a level that we cannot function or we cannot remediate in a very timely manner. Nowhere does it say that in there.
I gave a fairly lengthy presentation on this, and I think I was fairly clear in saying that the science could not determine how many cigarettes does it take to get lung cancer. And the same applies to how long or how much radon do you have to be breathing in order to get lung cancer. We know that lung cancer radon causes lung cancer. We know that it's the second leading
When I
cause of
spend
lung cancer.
$500,000 of taxpayers' money, Mr. Manager, I don't want to hear it from my city manager. I want to hear it from a specialist, like you brought in right here. The specialist that was brought in to talk about leases, commercial leases. I want to hear it from a specialist. I want to sit there and hear, this man says, look, you're at 9 picos here and 7 picos here, and bop, 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 bop,
It's all in
bop.
the reports.
It's not.
Yes, it is.
It's not in there documenting saying that it's over a safe level of operation. It's not in there saying that.
I explained at the meeting that
You did.
there's no consultant that can tell you what is
Okay.
too
Okay. I'm done.
safe and what's unsafe.
Okay. I'm
So, and I think they were fairly clear about that.
Okay.
And the EPA research is all there as well.
okay. All right.
So, I mean, the option is what? To stay here? I mean, is that the premise?
No, I
I'm
think that
totally
I think that we're upsetting the apple cart without really doing 110% due diligence for these taxpayers. And I think we'll see it in the end when they start taking walls apart and doing things, and we'll be able to back it up then. You can say, see, Mayor, you were wrong. You know, you see, nobody. Who's gone in and cut 6x6 holes and tested behind these walls in 4 or 5 different locations? No one has. No one. There's some surface cracks around some windows on the outside. I read the report. It was ridiculous. They talked about structural damage. You got to be kidding me. They're minor shifting, minor microscopic cracks. I walked around the whole building, looked at every single window. You know, I have 30 years of experience in building. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm any specialist to tell you, but the foundation's not given away. It's a solid building. And I guess what I'm saying is, where did we really do the due diligence? I looked at the other buildings you looked at. Some of the buildings were 60 and 70 years old. The mall over there on Washington Avenue, the building's got to be 70-plus years old. Why would we even consider going from a 50-year-old building to a 70-year-old building? What we're looking at tonight, there was no comparisons at all. It was apples and oranges. Did we look what we're going to do to upset the apple cart here as far as people coming to development services and building and zoning, and people coming to see you and other people here. They're going to spend first 2 weeks trying to find us. Then they're going to get over that hump. Why didn't we look at some type of operation set up here through, there's top-notch office space. Right now our military out at the Air Force Base, they're in modular office spaces. Our kids are in modular schoolrooms. They go through every single hurricane. I'm not asking you to make it a habitable situation where you live in. But you could have lined them up right there across that parking lot where we never fill on the very back road. And you could have continued operation here, probably for half this price. Did we even get a number on it? Did we even talk about trying to keep the same site so we wouldn't upset so many people who are coming to City Hall to see you, me, John, Patricia?
I can answer your questions, and there was different questions. I'll go back to the original question. The original question was, what kind of due diligence was done in regard to the safety of this building? And the due diligence was as follows. We first hired an expert on environmental expert who looks at the building and identifies that there's mold all over the building. And we have a report that's signed by them that was provided to you and to the rest of the council. And that report documents that there is mold all over the building. But because we didn't want to knee-jerk and we didn't want to do anything precipitous, we hired a second expert. It's also a nationally recognized firm to look at the building, go top through bottom, and we said, go the extra mile, do whatever you have to do to document everything. And so that's why you'll see in the second report, there's a whole lot of photos. There are photos that document all their finding as well. The second consultant finds not only that there's mold all over the building, and everywhere, in the HVAC system, and on the walls. They also look at what's causing that condition, and they find out that the building is penetrated through the various seams throughout the building. So whether it's cracks in the foundation, whether it's cracks in the fascia, whether it's windows that are not properly sealed, whether it's the roof that's got structural issues, the water gets in, which creates a mold condition. In addition, what the second expert found was that there are high levels of radon in the building. They also found that there's asbestos in the building as well, friable asbestos, which means as long as you don't disturb it, it's okay, but once you start disturbing it, then it becomes a health problem. So after the radar results came in, which became now a much more serious situation, they had done 7 samples in the building. And what we did was I guess what we did, I was 7 samples, and we followed the EPA's recommendation, United States Environmental Protection Agency, which basically said that if you're in excess of 4 picocuries per liter, that you should test a second time. If, on the other hand, you find that your numbers are at least double of the 4, which is the recommended action level according to the EPA, that you should test immediately. So what we asked the consultants to do is test again, but don't test just 7 locations. Let's do this thing comprehensively, and let's test every location in the building. And so that's what they did. And what you'll find in the report is every single test that they did is also signed and certified by the labs that did these testing. And we have a chart that shows for every room in the building what the picocurie levels are. And again, to reiterate for those that weren't at the meeting, picocuries are what is the measurement device they use. It's a measurement to determine how much radiation is in the air. And so what happens is, that's how they determine how much radiation that you're breathing. And the EPA has certain guidelines of what is average picocuries in the air, if you're outside, what's the average in an average office building, and then finally, what is the recommended action level, and what the EPA says is that if you're at 4 picocuries per liter, then mitigation is necessary to get those numbers down. And so as we did that, now we have 2 experts on mold. We have 2 rounds of tests on the radon. And then to go the extra mile, because everybody had a right to know, well, what would this mean to us then in terms of mitigation of this building? Our Director of Public Works, I invited contractors to come into the building, as you know, because they were here for a good amount of time, going through the building top to bottom to figure out what that would entail. Oh, and before we did that, the second expert that we had hired, we also asked them to do a mitigation plan. Give us your recommendation of what it would take to fix this building so that we don't have a mold problem, we don't have an asbestos problem, and we don't have a radon problem. And they put together a protocol based on their experience and their expertise. That protocol then was our first piece of evidence of what needs to be done in the building. And then we asked environmental contractors, mitigation construction contractors, to come into the building and give us estimates of what it would take to get this building into shape, decontaminating the building. And so the 2 basic problems we had was, after those 2 experts weighed in on the issue, was when you factor in the cost of mitigating, and then you factor in the disruption, both the construction people and also the environmental consultants told us the same thing, is they don't see a practical way to do the work in this building while people are in the building. So that was really the leading driver to the issue of, do you stay here and fix it, or do you move into space? And so that's really where we're at now. With why are we moving into office space to begin with, is because of that reason.
Okay.
Is the experts tell us that we can't fix this building while we're here, and so we need to evacuate the building one way or the other, whether you mitigate this building or you go into office space. So the longer-term question about, do you spend the $2 million to fix this building and then just move back in, or do you build a new city hall? That was a policy discussion. The council discussed it and made the decision. But I don't think there is any option at all about staying in this building unless you take the position that we're not going to mitigate it at all. And that certainly is an option, but as a city manager, I certainly would have a difficult time directing staff to continue to work in the building while they're, breathing in dangerous elements.
And my last question, you were going to answer before I allowed you to go through all this. I've heard this before exactly to a T.
But you raised your question, so I answered your question.
Yeah, and the last question was, did you look into any type of modular situation?
Yes, we looked at
that could be
modulars.
set up out here so that we wouldn't disrupt our taxpayers, our citizens, our customers?
We looked at both modulars and we looked at spaces, which I have both Dennis and Jerry here to go through that information. A couple of things before we get to them. One is, as far as process is concerned, what we did is we hired our real estate expert. We also knew of spaces that we were interested in, and we reached out to those landlords. In addition, we started getting calls from landlords who were interested in having us look at their space, realtors as well. So the position that I took was, if anybody said, oh, I have this great space, I'd like you to look at it, we went and we looked at it. So that everybody was treated equally, everybody was treated fairly. So because there's a limited amount of inventory in the city to begin with, we looked at space that we knew of, we looked at spaces that anybody asked us to look at, and then we also looked at the modulars. And I said, Dennis, why don't you go through the spaces that you looked at, and then we'll get to you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I would let you know on the module trailers, 10,000 square feet of trailer space, 40 offices and 1 conference room with 2 men's and women bathrooms. The one-time cost of installation and breakdown would be $83,636, and the monthly rental would be $9,222 a month.
9,000 versus 25,000. And if we did remediation here, and they could do it in 6 months, doesn't that add up quickly in my head on half the price? Because this building eventually is going to be, I don't think that every buyer is looking at tearing down a 14,000 square foot building. So you're either going to sell it with the problem, or you're going to remediate prior to the problem, which is probably the smarter thing to do, so you don't get sued after the fact again, if there was something else in here. But eventually something's going to happen. Not every buyer of this property is going to want to tear down this building. It's too much square footage.
I'm happy to answer your questions, if given the opportunity. The question was, can you move into trailers for 6 months and come back into the building? Well, the policy decision was made to build a new city hall for a variety of reasons. So you've already decided you're not coming back into the building. So then it's an issue of how long will it take to build City Hall? And we believe it's going to take somewhere between 2 to 3 years. I hope less, but I think realistically 2 to 3 years. So then the question is it a reasonable thing? Does it make sense to be renting trailers for 2 to 3 years? And when this is the center of government, we have a hurricane season that's at least 4 months, and we need to operate this government. And so as you look at $9,000 a month for trailers, plus you're on land that we already know radon is coming from someplace, right? So the last thing we want to do is put modular trailers on there and then have the gas be penetrating through these trailers. And then also, is it practical for the public? Well, the trailers would occupy a good portion of the parking spaces. And so from a practical perspective, it didn't seem like a good choice. So our recommendation is this space, but we also looked at the other spaces, and I think, Dennis, if you could go through those as well.
One space we looked at was 143 North Flagler Avenue. That's the satellite building off Flagler. Also Campbell Blue Shopping Center, which is the Campbell East across the street of the John Deere tractor place where Broadway and that's at.
Hey, do you have the square footage cost on each one of those?
They were all compatible with what we're looking at now. Also, the Portofino Plaza, which we were looking at now. The 151 Northwest 11th Street building, that's the medical building across from the Mass Academy now, that the that most of the medical offices went to Portofino East.
Right.
We also looked at 698 North Homestead Boulevard, which is right next door by the library. And we also looked at the Keysgate Country Club, and also the Rubber Barn site off Washington Avenue, and the Pioneer Mall.
And just for the record, I'd like to make one point, which is, he says their rents were comparable. They range from $13 a square foot to $18 a square foot, with the exception of one which was offered to us for free, but it was a complete shell and had no parking. So each of these had different challenges, and as Dennis goes through the list, you'll see that it wasn't just a function of square footage. In some cases also the CAM was a little different, and also in some cases the build-out was different. It would have required us to do the build-out. And what made this particular deal for us, we felt was a good deal, was that the landlord was willing to front the expense of the build-out costs, and basically the longer we're in there, the build-out costs are incurred by the landlord. So in each of the proposals, and in fairness to the other proposers, we just got a base proposal. We hadn't negotiated either, so it's kind of unfair to compare, because we're comparing a final deal with proposals that hadn't been negotiated. So in some cases, the property didn't work for us because there was no parking, so we didn't even spend any time on those. In some cases, like you mentioned, the building space just was too old. But the reason they're on the list was very simple, that they called and they said, we'd like you to look at it, so we did.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the follow-up on the modular space. The military uses it on a regular basis, and now they're building themselves a new building after they've been in it for about 4 years. And I really believe for 50% of the cost, and not paying any taxes, and not paying a CAM, and not causing disruption. The biggest thing is disruption to your taxpayers, disruption to your customers, the people who visit development services on a regular basis. And the parking is extremely atrocious over there where we're talking about going. If you park way out back, yeah, you can, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to have some unhappy citizens. And I think that even the center owner, Abos themselves, are going to be probably think twice when they see what type of parking we bring to the table versus what they have now. Because if you look at that place, the front 2 rows of parking, every store has got a sign up saying, so-and-so store, so-and-so store, because they have no parking without walking a great distance. So I think the modular really was something we should have looked at up front a little bit harder than we looked at it. That's only my opinion, and I want my opinion on the record.
Also, the modulars we looked at up front, that was the first thing we did because the council asked us to look at the modulars. And as we looked at the cost, then it made sense to start looking at space that was suited the needs of the city, because modulars, in my opinion, don't suit the need of the city, particularly during.
But it was 50% of the cost, less than 50% if you take the CAM out and the taxes out, and whatever other incidentals that I wrote down there. It's less than 50%. Better than that, you're not disrupting your citizens, and your citizens still come to the same location to do the same transaction. That's the biggie. I think that's the biggie. But anyway. Sir, did you want to say something? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure, go ahead.
Just, I guess to chime in on kind of where we're going with this thing. I mean, I've seen the reports, I've heard the presentations many, many times, and so I'm convinced that we have a health issue, a real health issue here in City Hall. And so I still support the policy decision that was made by this council at 2 prior meetings, and that was the direction that we gave you to find space to get our employees out of this building and into a safe building. And so I still support that. You know, so for me, the purpose of the meeting tonight is to discuss, you know, is this a good economic deal? The space that you guys have presented to us, does this make financial sense? And so I would like to hear from our expert. I'd like to hear his analysis of both the cost, per square foot. Is that a good deal for the city of Homestead, the surrounding areas? You know, those things are more important to me than some of the other stuff we've been discussing. And just to raise a point, the one thing I noticed about these modulars is that, you know, even with the modular price, we had someone come at the last council meeting who proposed that best case scenario they could remediate this city hall for $500,000. So if you take that $500,000 plus the $83,000 and the $9,000, I mean, you're still not very far off from the total 2 or 3 year price range of what we've got, and you have a much more functional space. And I don't know how well the monitors would have done for council meetings. So, I mean, again, something I want to hear as part of the analysis, though, because I do want to hear how one ties into the other. So with that, I'd like to hear from our consultant and find out, the nuts and bolts of the numbers here so I can make some decisions.
Sure, and I'll start by saying this, that the deal the City of Homestead negotiated on this lease has a lot of components, a lot of concessions that you would find in a 5-year lease or a longer-term lease that you guys essentially negotiated for and received essentially for maybe a 2-year lease, if that's all you guys are going to stay in the space. So it's huge concessions you guys negotiated and got from the landlord. As far as dollars and cents, a lot of these components that you guys are receiving through the negotiation, I don't know if you can attach a dollar cost to it, but I'll get right to the dollars on the lease rate. Our opinion is that a $17 lease rate for that kind of product is a great deal. I know there's other product in City of Homestead that is going to come cheaper, but it's going to come with other hair on it. You're going to have issues with parking. You're going to have issues with signage. What you guys negotiated here is $17. You have 5 months free rent up front. So if you were to terminate the lease, which you're allowed to do after year 2, essentially your effective rate is only $13.46 a foot. That's unheard of for basically a Class A building. That's something else to consider. Really, your effective lease rate, if you were to terminate after year 2, is $13.46 a square foot, because there's 5 months of free rent up front. I don't know if you guys have extrapolated that from the lease you have in hand. A lot of people don't look at it that way, but since this is a situation where you will be terminating to move into a new building, essentially, that's something you have to look at, your effective lease rate, and it's $13.46 a foot. It's unheard of. It's from that aspect. But some of the other components that you really couldn't put a dollar amount on, but it can still be looked at from a fiscal perspective, is the flexibility this gives you. You just need to give 90 days notice to terminate the lease. 90 days. Typically it's 180 days. Typically it's 6 months. You guys were able to get it in 90 days. It's not a one-time option to terminate. It's ongoing anytime after year 2. So when your contractor gets a CO, if it's in the 37th month, boom, you terminate. You don't see that too often. You have that kind of flexibility on the termination. You have options to renew. Hey, in reality, you're not going to renew the lease after 5 years. You're not going to be there. But it's an option there anyways, in case you want to maintain it. Who knows what happens? Maybe you guys want to sublease it to somebody else. I don't know how it works from there, but you also have the right to expand, right of first refusal to expand. You can expand. I mean, there's such a degree of flexibility here that you really can't put a dollar amount on sitting here, in a meeting like this that can be applied. But, the other thing is the termination. You're going to terminate with no penalty and no out-of-pocket costs. You're not paying back for attorney fees or anything like that. Signage, once again, that's not something that has dollars and cents attached to it, but you're not going to find another building that's going to give you top of the building signage like that, and you're only taking 16 or 17% of the center. It's another factor. And I know parking is an issue with the taxpayers. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but you guys were able to negotiate quite a few parking spaces that are reserved for the tenants or for the patrons, and actually a percentage of those are right near the entry doors.
Good luck.
Well, no, they're there. They're reserved. It'll say City of Homestead, or however you guys want it to read. There's no luck about it. It's in writing. And, you just have to argue to enforce the lease.
Gotcha.
So.
That's what we'll do. We'll start towing our citizens' cars next year. We'll do that.
Well, you want to do that. But anyways, I'll just get back to the dollars and cents. Like I said, it's $17. It's a great rate for that building, but when you factor in the free rent, the effective rate drops to $13.50 a foot after year 2.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure, please.
Follow-up question I have, too, is dealing with the spaces that we have to choose from here that you guys looked at. Given, again, the concern about getting the employees out faster rather than later, are there any other buildings that allow us to do that? I mean, compare, I guess, this building, this choice versus some of the others as far as the time frame of getting our employees out, build-out time, things of that nature. Can you go into that a little bit for me as well?
By the lease, the build-out should be in 90 days, and that's after the plans are done. We get a pull of permits and then get everything ready. in 90 days, this should be done. If it's not, then we get free rent every day. It's like with the damages, that we get free rent each day that they don't finish. If you pass this lease, we will start looking at, how about, moving expenses to get that over there and try to get that done very quickly once it's completed.
But compare this building with what you just told me compared to, say, some of the options we had at the table. Were some of the other options, could we move in as quickly? Was it slower? Was it faster? That's what I'm trying to compare, is what my options are, my choices.
It would be much longer. The reason why is that most of these aren't built out. We would have to go through the process of procurement, which we'd have to go out for bid. That would probably take about 90 days, and then we have to wait for the construction, so we'll be there longer. And this is a lot faster deal for us than the other buildings that we were looking at.
Okay, and then last question, then I'm sure. My last question is to the city attorney, and that is that, given the nature of the reports that we've had presented to us, and where did he go? That's it. I'll wait for a second till he comes back.
Oh, there you go.
Either one. I was asking a legal question. My question being that
I was trying to rearrange our executive sessions that are supposed to start in 5 minutes.
Okay. My question being that, the reports that we've had presented here and some of the health concerns that have been raised, regarding our employees, as far as from a legal standpoint, the faster that we address the situation, because theoretically there could be lawsuits filed as a result of, by employees or anybody else that's spent a lot of time in these buildings, the faster we take some sort of remedial action to remedy the situation, does that not increase or improve our legal standing going forward versus, say, the longer we take now that we're aware of these problems?
First of all, I hope that we don't get any claims, but in light of the publicity that there's been surrounding this, we could get claims from current or former employees.
And just for the record, City Attorney, we've already received 2 employees have come to HR, have complained, and we're waiting to see whether they'll file a formal claim.
And I have reviewed those reports, and I'm not an expert, but those reports, somebody certainly can make a case that the building is dangerous. And I think that the sooner that we get out of the building, whether it's to the trailers or to this other space, I think it reduces the potential damage that we could have from people working in the building.
Through the mayor.
Sure.
I have a question. I'd just like to echo the sentiments of my colleague, Councilman Shelley. First off, I don't think you can put a price tag on someone's health. So there's no refuting the fact that we have to move out of this space. But as equally as important as it is to be responsive to the needs of our staff, I think it is as equally as important to be responsive to the needs of our residents and ensure that the financial dollars that we're putting into this swing space makes financial sense. So I've asked most of all of you several questions about the different locations, but for the sake of our residents, so that it is clear, I feel it would have been more helpful to have a cost analysis, a comparison of the Protel site, how much per square foot, how much for the build out, how many days it would take for us to get into this space, so that we have buy-in for them, so that there's a rationale as to why we are selecting this space as opposed to Keys Gate Golf and Country Club. We know that up here from the dais, but I'm not sure that the residents know. So the questions that we're asking is for you to provide clarity so that they understand why we're moving in this direction. I don't know if you have those numbers, but if you do, I think it will be very helpful. And for the record, I'm for it. I'm not looking for the creme de la creme of Homestead to be in temporarily, but I just want to make sure that we're selecting the site that's more, financially viable for us.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, Councilman Fairclough. We did an internal document, a matrix of the 6 locations we went to. So we have the average cost per square foot as well as the square footage that's available for the different sites. They range from $16 up to $18 per square foot. There was one outlier that was, they were offering $0 per square foot, but obviously there was no parking as well as there was build-out costs. Square footage-wise, everybody's coming in very close between 10,000 and 14,000 square foot. annual leases range from $166,000 from one center to $164,000. That $164,000 is less now, which happens to be the Portofino site. But I'll be more than happy to provide this matrix to the rest of council if you would like.
I think it would have been helpful to, I think it would have been helpful to be in the document, but like I said, it's not really for us, it's for the residents so that they understand the dollar amount.
Mayor?
Yes, Ms.
I'm
Wallman.
sorry.
I'm sorry, you too?
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yes. I'm going to speak as a realtor, because I've been in the real estate business for over 30 years, and I can tell you the last commercial lease I negotiated, it was a 7.5% CAM. So I think that, I know Dennis, you were in the, and Jerry, and I think Dennis was in the front with the negotiations and finding, seeking information to bring back to the manager, and then the manager, of course, makes the final decision as far as the staff goes. But I think that you can't compare some of these properties because they're not apples to apples. There's apples to oranges. And I think they did the very best thing that they could do, and that was to go out and see everything that anybody called about, because you don't want someone to feel that they're not getting a fair shake. You know, so everybody was contacted, every property was visited. And I can tell you, if you go on the MLS right now, you'll see that, you know, I don't know if you agree, sir, but 17, 18, 19, even higher dollars is average.
Yeah, I would say north of $18.
Yes.
Especially if you're comparing straight apples to apples.
Exactly.
You know, a
Exactly.
facility that offers the signage, offers the parking, offers the breakdown to the common area restrooms that can handle a certain amount of people that I'm not so sure portables could. I haven't seen the layout. But updated fire and life safety systems, new roofs. It's a fairly new center. I'm not sure the exact age. but,
Exactly.
You know, got a lot of things there, so
and
you
the
just have to
one-
make sure you're comparing apples to apples.
Exactly. And I know when I first found out about all the different places that you were going to, I'm like, why are we doing that? But now I understand why we did that, because we don't want anybody to feel that they didn't get, you know, the fair treatment that they deserved. As far as the public goes, I can only speak for myself and what I hear back from people, and that is that they want these employees out of this building. And I think I'm the one that brought up the portables in the first place, and that was only as a substitute just until we could find a place, because I wanted the employees out right then and there. And I've been begging for a report since 2005, and to my knowledge, this is the first report that we have, the only report that we have, saying that, you know, that we actually have the figures of the radon and the mold and all the other things that are in this book that I didn't bring. I wish I had it, but so once we have that report, once we know that that report is there, we have to act on it. So when I brought up the modules and the portables, I was speaking only in very temporary, just to get them out. And then when I found out the cost of just, you know, for that temporary, I was floored. Didn't you say it was about $83,000, Dennis?
Set it up, yeah.
And so with all that being said, and all the places that we've looked at, or that the staff has looked at, I feel that this place is the best suited. And I think the public would certainly understand. Matrix would be helpful. You know, I've tried to explain it to people. And I can honestly say I've not had one person complain to me. Not one person complained to me. They feel that this is an expense that we have to make for the sake of the employees that are in this building and for the sake of you that come to this building. So, you know, again, I haven't had anybody complain to me. And I think the building best suits us. I think we need to all be together. You can't run a government when you have everybody scattered all over the place. And I haven't seen the space itself, but I've seen the sketches. And I think that it's going to work out for us. I want to commend the attorneys and Dennis and the rest of the staff, because I'm telling you, you negotiated a heck of a deal. And I'm sorry, sir, what is your name?
My name is Joel.
Joe. Well, I just want to say that thank you for saying all that you said, because I think they negotiated a heck of a deal. And when you know, you can say, oh, well, let's go here and let's do that. But when you get down to that table and you sit down and you start hashing out, well, you know, who's going to do this and who's going to do that, and what if the toilet breaks and what if the sprinkler system and what if this and what if that, you know, that's when the true negotiating skills kick in. And this lease is superb. It's got my seal of approval, and I just want to say that. So thank you, and thank you for all the hard work. And let's get the heck out of here. Let's get the heck out of here now.
Don't be filing anything. Okay, any further questions before I open the public hearing?
I would just like to say one thing. Going to the lease that we've negotiated, are we on that stage yet?
Sure, go ahead.
I went over and looked at the space. There's plenty of space there for what we're trying to do. The second floor is built out considerably further along than the first floor. What I would like to see and ask the property owners is obviously they're going to benefit from the build-out eventually. Whether it's in 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever, there's going to be a benefit to the prime group from us being in there and doing our build-out. The first floor, like I said, is bare block and going to be a considerably higher build-out cost. And I'm wondering if they're willing to look at that cost for the first floor and bring the building to a block from block to a finished product at their cost rather than the city paying for that extent. I mean, I understand that walls are going to be moved and all that upstairs, so what we're looking at has cost. But the downstairs, for you that haven't been there, is just nothing but cinder block at this time. And I don't know why the city's got to take the burden of the entire build-out for that floor on. So that would be one of my questions to somebody, if maybe the gentleman could give me his expert opinion on it. Maybe Dennis can tell me if they addressed it in the lease negotiations. And then maybe Prime could give me what their opinion is to my thoughts.
I can address it just in a broad scope and let them take over from here because we weren't part of the lease negotiations. But I will say we walked the space several times looking at the construction cost that the landlord was saying it would cost. And you're right, the ground floor space is first generation, never built out. It's raw space, so there is a little utility factor that the landlord's receiving after the end of the lease. He'll have some systems of air conditioning, he'll have some electrical panels, some plumbing brought into the space, but typically nobody does 2-year leases. Really hard to find 2-year leases, especially where raw space has to be built out and delivered to a tenant. So in essence, it's not on the 5-year lease, which I know the city of Homestead is not going to stay for 5 years. But all these concessions that were negotiated for a 5-year lease, it costs the city of Homestead zero if they were to live for the full term of the lease and not exercise the termination clause that they negotiated. So it costs them zero, and it costs the city of Homestead a little bit more every month before month 60 that they terminate the lease. But I'll just hit that with a broad scope, and then whoever else wants.
So in your opinion, then, you believe that it's a fair deal the way that the space is now with the conditions that we've negotiated in an open market that you would take somebody to?
Well, I would say for 2 reasons it's a fair deal. Let's forget about the termination clause after 2 years. We're looking at a 5-year lease. It's a very fair deal. It costs the tenant, City Homestead, nothing out of their pocket. So it's a fair deal from that aspect. And the other aspect, though, if you do the math on the cost of what they're saying it's going to cost them to do the build-out, first and second floor combined, it's coming into just $23 to $24 a square foot, which is obscenely low in my opinion.
I thought it'd be like 50.
Right.
60.
So when you do the math, it's only coming out at 23 to 24 bucks. I mean, MEPs and architectural plans are usually $3 to $3.50 a foot, and carpet and paint is $8 if you're to carpet and paint this place. So, and you're dealing with a building that's, I think you said it was 2005, so you got up-to-date life safety systems, you got to use the same fire alarm contractor, fire sprinkler systems. So, I think it's a pretty fair deal. from those two aspects.
You know, it never hurts to ask, my dad told me, so, you know, I always try, and he tried to beat people up or beat them, you know, I wasn't sitting in the negotiations, and obviously I'm not a commercial real estate guy that knows what's going on in the market or anything.
We're looking at it from a construction side too, the kind of improvement side. It's hard to get anything done for under 30, especially as part of the stuff that's raw space.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, may I just add one?
Dennis, can I just get a quick follow-up with Dennis? Dennis, where did we start out at on the build-out and to where we ended up? Just give me, you know, like either per square foot and where we ended up, or total amount of money to where we ended up, or?
So I was going to ask total amount. It's my same question.
When we first started negotiations, it was $18 a square foot. They wanted us to pay the build-out, which I negotiated not to pay out because I told them that we weren't going to pay that out. And also, the signage went from $2,500 to $400 a month.
Right, but
First year free.
the total build-out, where did they start? They wanted us to start to pay for it originally out of our own pocket?
Yes, they wanted us to give them the money up front.
And just for a point of clarity, the guesstimate as to what it's going to cost, obviously, we haven't got the final plans to them yet. We have what we think we would do over there. But what is the cost that's going to be incurred, just so everybody knows, and with that?
Their estimated cost was $345,000.
Okay, and if we stay for 36 months, what would be the city's liability? I know it's in our package, but I'm just, for those that are sitting here.
I think it's 200.
Basically $69,000 a year, I think.
Is what it comes out.
So if you terminate after year 3, there'd be 2 years of $69,000 a year.
Okay, thank you. And obviously, they don't want to stand up and negotiate because they didn't go to the podium.
See, I did see the first go-around where they wanted, this is interest-free too, this is real dollars today dollars that you'd be paying in year 3. I think originally that there was some kind of a factor thrown in there that you guys may go away or something.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to give you a real-life experience. Several years ago, I opened a business in the Falls area, in the warehouse district, and I rented a 3,000 square foot space, and I had to put my own air conditioner in. I had to put my own shelving, everything. I had to paint it. I had to put the carpet in, everything. And the lease simply said that when I left, all that stayed behind with the landlord. This is typical. This is done every day, every day. And again, if you take the cost analysis and you look at the bottom line figure as to what it's really costing us, and besides that, you can't put a price on people's health. You know, it's time we move. It's time we do something, and we need to do it now. So, but I wanted to share that real life experience with you that, you know, I've been at that table not only as the broker, but also as the client, and it's tough. It takes hours and hours and days and sometimes months to come to an agreement. So, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, Mr. Maldonado.
Yes, I had a few questions, and I know that many of them were already answered here, but mine were more the sense of, you know, in moving, you know, I see the importance of moving and you know, support us getting out here as soon as possible. My concerns are more for the residents and what are we doing to make sure that we're notifying them of the changes of what's happening. So some of the questions are, well, what and how are we notifying all of our residents of the new locations? I know that some of it was answered in the signs. My questions were, are we doing mail-outs? What about the signages? And if you guys could just kind of elaborate. I know you spoke a little bit about it, but you know, how are we making sure that the residents know that we're there?
Our intent is to put together an informational campaign draft, and then bring it to you just to make sure you're comfortable with what our plan would be, and then we'll implement. So we didn't want to go that step until we knew where we're going. Okay. We'll have 60 to 90 days, so hopefully we can get you the plan within a week or two.
Okay. And another concern, which was already answered, was that of parking. And my question was going to be, are we going to have designated parking spots? How many spots we said we have again?
25.
25. And you guys are going to bring forward to us how they're going to be doled out, you know, labeled or put out. Who's going to be working on that? Who's going to bring that forward towards us?
Once we sign the lease, I will give it the those, and we will pick out the 25 that we would like.
Where are we going to be having our city hall meetings?
We were thinking the community center, and we thought we might want to have a discussion of that, whether it would be tonight or another night, but that was our initial thought.
Okay. And then you already answered the other one about the lease agreement. How many, so again, 2 years, after 2 years, we have 90 days, we could terminate the lease. That was one of my main concerns. I think that's it for right now.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, excuse me, Mr. Manager, while you bring that up, I think this would be a perfect opportunity for us not to just use the community center, but to look at FICO Williams and stuff and give people around the community an opportunity. So I'd like to make sure that we look around and don't limit ourselves in just saying that.
So you'd like us to look at potential sites and come back to you with...
Well, or perhaps we even do an alternate thing while we're out there, and that reaches...
Whatever your pleasure.
Yeah, I'm just saying, while we're making plans and a planning thing, that gives all people of different areas that maybe can't travel to here easily at night or whatever, an opportunity to come see us.
Do you want one location, or you're okay with multiple locations?
I would prefer to see possibly, if it's feasible and doable, multiple locations where we can reach out to the entire city.
Okay. We'll look at it.
Okay, any final questions?
Just a comment.
Sure.
I would just like to commend Dennis Maytan on your lease negotiations. I know it was a lot of work. I had the opportunity to tour the site with you on Friday. I had a lot of questions for you, and you answered them very well. I spoke with Lillian on Friday. I spoke to Donna on Saturday, Sunday, and up until 4 o'clock coming here because I had to be comfortable with the decision that I was making. And after doing my homework on the square foot, the lease, the CAM, the taxes, I feel comfortable moving into this space. I just wanted to be sure that the residents who approached me at the polls this past weekend asking questions about the new City Hall space, I was able to provide them those answers because I had done my homework and my due diligence. So I was asking those questions for those residents who may not pick up the phone to call us. But just to be clear, I support this move 100%. I just was asking questions for the record for those residents who may not pick up the phone to call. So good job to you.
Okay.
One more comment, just
Sure.
if you could have a report or a listing of the breakdown of the costs so that as we get asked the question how much we're paying, that we could actually go to it and provide it for our citizens as well. Thank you.
Yeah, let me piggyback on that too. I'd like to have the modular breakdown cost, all right? The modular breakdown cost of what you guys have found so far. And then, of course, the breakdown with the CAM, with the taxes, with everything. Because just doing quick math, it's $1.2 million for 3 years. It's $1.2 million versus $400,000 for modular. So I want to feel better about it. I'm not going to vote in favor of it tonight. I do believe we need to get out of this building. But I just don't, I think we're way overdoing it versus what we could do and get by with. So I'd like to see both those numbers, and completely, in its entirety, if I could, within 24 hours, if I could, 48 hours, max. All right, I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come forward? Welcome.
Halloween colors.
My name is Clara Waterman Powell, 745 Southeast 18th Lane. I have 3 things I'd like to mention. Number 1, would you please ensure that the trolley will increase ridership so to get the folks from down there. Luckily, the trolley stops there. Number 2, someone who uses handicapped parking, not because she wants to, because she has to, would you please look at increasing the number of handicapped parking places at Portofino? That's going to be important because you're going to have increased. And number 3, are you going to be able to take, health-wise, all the furniture out of here? Are you going to be moving this existing furniture and desks, et cetera, into Portofino? And then are you going to be moving it into the new building? I understand the new building, we looked at new furniture. In other words, we might be, rather than buying new furniture for Portofino and buying new furniture for the City Hall, maybe we can kind of look at doing it less expensive. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Did you get your invitation tonight? Yes, sir. Yeah, your question. I'm sorry, 1 second.
We have two components to the move. The first one is the actual moving costs, which we have one estimate for $25,000. And then the next thing we're looking at is how much will it cost to clean the furniture before we go in there. And so we're hoping that'll be significantly less, but, you know, I guess, Julio, what's your sense of that?
Yeah, we're still working on the number regarding the cleaning of the furniture, but yeah, moving every furniture that we have here will be around $25,000. That's the cost, so that would be the worst case scenario, I guess.
Question if I could, Chair, Mr. President. I cannot remember. I remember at one point there was chairs that sat in the back of the council chambers and all that were designed and brought, and this is a big night of mine here, that were brought and left back there. Are we far enough along, excuse me, in the plans where furniture and stuff, I believe some furniture and stuff had been chosen that would be, that we would be able to pick up and bring over there if the cost that it is to bring this stuff over there is an absurd amount? So can we make sure that we look at that to see if it economically is better for us to start the purchase now?
Yeah, the existing build documents include all the furniture for the new building. So that's something that we could look at as well, to see if we can maybe pre-purchase some of those up front. That's an option that we have also, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Mr. City Attorney, and members of the audience. My name is Dr. Joe Van Lauer. I represent Committee for a Better Homestead. We have about 150 members. We're for moving the City Hall. We're for the safety of the staff and the employees. But like so many of the council members seem to feel, we want to do this in the most economically feasible way. And then I'm having the feeling that the council is interested in further investigating some of these proposals that are in front of us, whether it be further investigation of the Portofino or some of the other properties or trailers. And so we've been dealing with this problem now for many, many, many years, and it seems to me that a month or two is not going to make any difference. But again, we are anxious to get everyone out of this building. The second thing is a direct question to the manager or to the city attorney. We know that we're going to have some lawsuits here. There's no question about it. What happens when these lawsuits start to come in? Do we carry insurance to cover these things, or does it come out of the general fund if we lose? Are we going to bring in outside attorneys to defend us, or is that something that you do? And are we gearing up for such an event?
Let me give you a couple of answers. First, we would look to our insurance to see whether we have insurance to cover this kind of thing. Our liability insurance is we have an attorney that handles that for us, Eric Stetton. If in certain cases where the type of matter is very specialized, we do bring in outside lawyers. It hasn't happened a lot, but we have done it. Mr. Sirotto, my partner, and I are in the process of working on a contingency plan, what the city should be doing now in terms of trying to mitigate any liability that we have. But the first part of it, honestly, is to move out of this building as quickly as possible, and then, a process for dealing with any kind of claims that might come up.
So the answer is, at this moment, we're not sure whether or not the insurance we're carrying will cover such a claim.
Right. Priscilla may be here. I don't know if she's here or insurance. She might know.
Hi, good evening, Mayor. Yes, sir, we do have workers' compensation coverage for our employees, and if anyone, were to request that, we would turn a claim in for that. And that is funded and partially paid out of the city's self-insurance program.
That wouldn't necessarily apply to a negligence claim, so that's, depends on what the claim is.
Right, that would be something separate.
I prefer not to inventory what they might sue us for. The idea is, but they could sue us for a lot.
Well, okay, so apart from your information, supposing the insurance we have doesn't cover this, and let's just imagine that we lost a case, where would that money come from to pay the claimant?
I mean, theoretically, it would come from fund balances.
From the general fund?
Depends on what the claim is and where it's coming.
Okay, then my last comment is I hope that we're ready and we're focusing on this, the prospect of something like this happening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ed Powell, 745 Southeast 18th Lane. Mayor, I'm basically in favor of modulars. You see them all over. You see them at school. You see them in business centers. And the land we've got out here, we've got all kinds of property out here without affecting any of the parking. You've got land south of the utilities building. You've got land out here. You could put modulars out here in a heartbeat. And as far as I think, if you go to rent and you're going to spend all that money in rental, why don't you sell the property and stay in the building for 20 years? You're going to spend all that money, rent over here, while you're going to spend how many 28 millions in a two-city hall. Why don't you just sell the land and take the money and use that for your rent for the next 20 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions from the public? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Final questions from council. I'd like to clear the area with the Prime Group. I'm very much in favor of the Prime Group. They're very good people. They're very honorable people. The Abbos family has done us well here in Homestead. It's nothing against them. It's nothing against the actual build-out, the building they have over there, and the build-out they're going to do, and the CAM, and the insurance, and the taxes, $1.2 million, $1.3 million before we get done. It's my fiduciary responsibility I have to those people right there, the citizens of a homestead. And $1.2 million or $3 million, it'll be more than that. That's just rough math right here now, $1.3 million versus $400,000. I'll take it any day of the week. And he's right. The modulars can be put up in less than 30 days. This build-out's 90 days. And I didn't even know we were paying for the build-out. That's how I missed it until John brought it up. So we're paying for the build-out over 3 years. So you add that factor back into it. We're going to spend $1.5 million before we're done versus $400,000. And I go back to saying it. If we can put our children in it, and we can put our military in it, we can put our city council in it. Simple as that. It's my fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of this city to spend their money, to me, very, very appropriately. We say it every day. We talk about it every day. We need to put it to work. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilman Maldonado.
Yes.
Councilwoman Wallman.
Yes.
Councilwoman Fairclough McCormick.
Yes.
Councilman Shelley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgess.
Yes.
Mayor Bankman.
No.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
We have 2 brief executive sessions following.